welcome to today's lesson in Color Theory series. Today we are going to create an artwork using values and values only. Now the idea is you're going to create this work in values and then you're going to put it aside. If you're working with oils, that'll give it a chance to dry. And then you can also use acrylics today. And then we're going to bring it back after a few lessons and work on it again. So today I am using, if you can remember the color wheel that we did in the first lesson, a value is a hue or a color, and you either add white to it or you add black to it. And today we're just using 5 of those values. So I'm using a burnt umber, and I'm going to be painting a person in an interior. So I'm going to make a little guide. So I'm going to add black and brown to number 5. They all have numbers 1 to 5, 1 being the lightest, 5 being the darkest. So it's good. 5 is going to have brown and black, and then 4 is just going to be a very dark brown. Number 1 is going to be pure white, and 2 and 3 are going to be, between number 1 and number 4. And the easiest way for me I'm working from a photograph. Oopsie, just dropped that. I'm working from a photograph, and the easiest way for me to figure out those values is for me to turn my colored photo into a black and white, which I've done over here. So this is the original image here of my niece in our hallway, the apartment block hallway, in a little patch of sun, drinking wine and reading a book she didn't know that I was there taking photos, but I did. So I've changed that into, first I tried a sepia to see if I would like that, to give it a warm glow, and I could use that for my value painting, or I can just do black and white. So I'm using this, what's it called? Black and white version. What else do I need to tell you? Okay, so I am working here with photographs, but anytime that you get to use a real human, it's going to be way better. Working from life is always the best. And if you are working from a human, from life, one of the things you can do to break down those values, because what happens is when you're looking at something in black and white, it's hard. When you're looking at something in color, it's hard sometimes to figure out what is the brightness of the color and what is the actual value of something. So sometimes you need to get rid of all that. So when I was studying with Avert Plow, a very amazing portrait artist, look him up, he's so good. He showed me this using a little red piece of cellophane, and I made my own out of Perspex. So you can look at your anything that you're painting. It could be a still life, it could be a landscape, and you look through this at everything that you're going to draw or paint, and when you look through here, it just takes rid of all the color and you just have the lights and the darks. So if you are working from life, great to have. Tip of the day, so good. So let's get started. I'm ready to begin my drawing. You'll need some willow charcoal. I use the willow charcoal 2 reasons. It doesn't have to be this thick. It comes in different thicknesses. The reason I use this is, number 1, I can put it down and wipe it off much, much easier than if I was using a pencil and eraser. The other thing is, because it's nice and chunky, I don't get bogged down by details. If you're using a pencil, you have this really fine line. I'll just grab my pencil. You'll have all these beautiful fine lines, do a perfect drawing, and then you come in with a big paintbrushes like that to loosen things up, and you're going to lose all of that beautiful, pencil line. That's a very, very thin pencil, very, very thick paintbrush. Nice and chunky line, nice chunky paintbrush. So it just works out better, okay? So when I'm doing my drawing, this isn't really a drawing class, so I don't want to get too much into it, but I have put my image upside down, and I really just want to block in the largest shapes first. So I want to look at this big, huge block here. and this block here. So I'm looking at not just the positive shapes, but the shapes in between. This whole light area in here, this lighter area in here. So I'm going to draw that now in a timeline. I've flipped my drawing around the correct way, and I've had a look and I'm happy with it. So it's now time to mix some paint. Okay, here I have my palette with my burnt umber and my ivory black and my titanium white, and I'm going to make my value scale now. You'll notice that I'm using a palette knife to do my mixing. That's because when I mix colors using a paintbrush, all the paint gets stuck in the actual brush. And I don't want it stuck in the brush, I want it on my palette. And mix a lot of paint, especially if you're using acrylic, because it dries very quickly. Oils, you don't have to mix as much because they go a long way. Now, I'm just going to simply fill in my little value scale. Try to make sure that your colors have a good mix between light to dark. Okay, now I've zoomed up on my photo reference. It's time for me to decide on what values to use in what areas. So I've cut out my little color swatch just so I can actually lay the color swatch against my photo reference and to see what values match. So the thing is, there's a lot of subtlety in that photo reference that I'm looking at. So usually I would be using maybe 10 different values. In this case, I only have 5, so I have to kind of work out what that normally would be maybe in between my number 3 and 4, like those legs there. Now I might have to decide if they're going to be a 3 or they're going to be a 4, or maybe one will be a 3 and one will be a 4. You can see it's neither, it's kind of in between the two. So this is going to be a bit of an exercise in thinking a little bit more graphic, and last week's exercise in pop art and trying to keep something really graphic is really going to help in this exercise. So there's a lot of subtleties in those legs and in the stairs, and I might find that the stairs and the legs, they look to me like they're the same value, so I'm going to be losing some information. When I'm looking at the image like that, you can see that this information in here does get lost. You know, I can't really tell when one thing is starting and another thing is finishing. It's really kind of difficult to work that out. There are some things that might be a little bit lighter in here, so I might be doing this in number 2, and that might be a number 3, and down here it might be a number 4. So I'm going to have a go at that. The first thing I need to do, though, when I'm looking at my painting, is I need to pick up all this charcoal. And when I say pick it up, what I mean is I get a brush. If you're using acrylic, you can use a little bit of water. Because I'm using oils, I'm going to get a little bit of turpentine, mineral terps, or whatever sort of terps you're using. And I'm just going to go over my lines of my drawing and pick those up like that. I'm going to go over the whole thing. Okay, it's now time for me to start putting down my values, and I'm going to start with the darkest thing. So I will begin putting in this darker black. And usually I start my darks, I start very thin and I work my way up to be thicker. So the darkest thing is this top here, is the dress. I'm still not finished my drawing. I'm still kind of putting things in. Okay, now it's time for my second value, which is the number 4. Second darkest thing. One of the things I'm trying to avoid, my impulse is to just outline everything, make everything here a number 4. But there is no outline, and around the bottom of the foot over here is actually light. So over here it's actually light, and I am going to have to simplify these values, but I don't want to simplify them with the darkest thing. So you just have to really think before you put that down. Why are you putting that value down there? So it's a little bit tricky, and it's probably going to take me some time. So I'm not going to do this whole thing real time. I'm going to do some as a time lapse, but just so you can see how I've started here. I'm going to go to a number 3 now. So I'm going to go up to this one now. And things will start coming together a little bit more now. So leave the space where that white is going. can see that my image doesn't have a lot of detail in that face, and so I'm just putting that in as like quite a bit of dark there. I've made one leg darker than the other. I think that's going to work better. And then I find that this leg here, which I've made that as the number 4 value, under here is also a 4. So I sort of lose that foot in there. And where I get it back is the lightness behind this heel here. So when I'm actually painting, this is how I can tell if my drawing is wrong, is if I put this in that little section there, the leg and the bit of the shadow behind the stair, I can tell if my drawing is wrong if the heel, I feel like this foot is in the right spot, the heel is here, there should be a patch of light here. Okay, so this is where I can get a sock, or if I'm using oils, I can have to wipe it away. This is where I get a little something and just wipe that off. So my drawing, whatever that was there was incorrect. That should be light. And that's better. And then I'm finding that this little space over here, that's also going to be a number 4. So I'm going to do this as a time lapse now. So that's going to be, yeah, maybe that's a 4. So I'm actually umming and ahhing with my decisions here. Is it a 4? Is it a 3? Is it a 2? Is it a 1? I don't know. So that's going to be up to you as well to make those decisions and try to figure out what value is what. Okay, so time lapse. Me finished for the day. I ended up using 5 different paint brushes. It was easier in the oils than having to clean them every few minutes. It would have been easier to do this whole exercise in acrylic, and that way I would have kept all of my values separate. Would have kept the shades away from the tints. But because I did it with oils, my shades and my tints got a little bit muddied up, which means that I created some tone. At the end of the day, if you're using oil and you end up having a bit of tone, which means you've muddied up your colors, it doesn't really matter for this exercise. It's perfectly fine. We're going to put these aside, we're going to let them dry, and we're going to bring them back in a few lessons, and we're going to add color to them, either by using a glaze or just trying to match the value with the value here, but in color. So it's a whole new level. So I'm going to see you in the future for that one. And thanks so much for joining me today. Thanks. Bye.